The kakapo. It is the heaviest parrot on Earth, a bird so committed to its own extinction that it seems almost deliberate. Males can weigh up to 4 kilograms, which is roughly the weight of a newborn human, and they cannot fly. Not poorly, not weakly, not at all. The flight muscles that other parrots use to escape predators, the kakapo traded away over millions of years in exchange for a fat, comfortable life on the forest floor of New Zealand, where for most of its evolutionary history there were no land predators to worry about. It was a reasonable trade. Until it wasn't. New Zealand had no native land mammals when the kakapo evolved. No cats, no rats, no weasels. The birds that developed there did so in a world where the sky was the only direction danger came from, and the kakapo's solution was to freeze perfectly still when threatened, relying on its mottled green-brown feathers to blend into the forest floor. That works against a hawk. It does not work against a stoat that hunts by smell. When Polynesian settlers arrived, and then European settlers arrived with their rats and cats and weasels, the kakapo had no behavioral response. It just stood there. By the 1970s, the population had collapsed to the point where some researchers believed it was already functionally extinct. A small population was discovered on Fiordland and Stewart Island, and conservation teams began one of the most intensive single-species rescue operations in history. Every kakapo alive today has a name. Every single one. There are currently around 250 of them, and that number represents a genuine conservation success story, because there used to be fewer. The kakapo also only breeds every 2 to 4 years, and only when a specific tree called the rimu produces a heavy fruit crop, which it does unpredictably. So the species is essentially on a reproductive schedule it cannot control, managed by a small team of humans who monitor each bird individually, supplement their food supply, and move eggs between nests to maximize survival rates. This is what it looks like when a species is being kept alive by hand. And the kakapo exists nowhere else on Earth. Not one wild individual outside of a few small offshore islands in New Zealand where predators have been eradicated. That is the entire world population of an animal that has been on this planet for millions of years. The axolotl. Most people know this one from video games or internet pictures because it looks like something a child designed. A pale pink salamander with feathery external gills fanning out from its head like a crown, a permanent smile, and lidless eyes that give it a look of constant mild astonishment. What most people don't know is where it actually lives. Not in a river, not in a network of lakes across central Mexico. In one lake. Lake Xochimilco, on the southern edge of Mexico City, which is one of the most densely populated urban areas on Earth. The axolotl's entire wild habitat is a shrinking system of ancient canals and lake remnants in the middle of a city of 22 million people. What makes the axolotl genuinely strange isn't the way it looks. It's what it can do. The axolotl exhibits neoteny, meaning it reaches sexual maturity and reproduces while retaining its larval form. It never fully metamorphoses. It stays in a state of permanent biological adolescence, and that arrested development comes with a consequence that sounds like science fiction. It can regenerate, not just skin, not just minor tissue. The axolotl can regrow entire limbs, sections of its heart, parts of its brain, and its spinal cord. The regenerated tissue is functional. The regrown limb has bones, muscles, nerves, and skin in the correct arrangement. Researchers have been studying this ability for decades, trying to understand the mechanism because the same cellular machinery, the ability to reactivate growth programs in differentiated adult cells, is something humans have a suppressed version of. The axolotl just never turned it off, and it lives in a polluted urban canal system that gets smaller every year. The wild population is now estimated at somewhere between 50 and 1,000 individuals, a range that wide because they are genuinely difficult to find and count in the murky water. There are millions of axolotls in captivity worldwide, in research labs and home aquariums, which creates a strange situation where an animal capable of regrowing its own brain is simultaneously one of the most popular exotic pets on Earth, and critically endangered in the only place it has ever naturally existed. the lemurs of Madagascar. This one requires a slightly different framing because lemurs aren't a single species. They're an entire evolutionary lineage, and every single species within that lineage exists only on Madagascar and a few tiny surrounding islands. There are over 100 recognized lemur species, all of them, every last one, found nowhere else. And that's not because they spread from Madagascar to other places and then died out elsewhere. It's because Madagascar broke away from mainland Africa roughly 160 million years ago and drifted into isolation, and the ancestors of lemurs arrived on the island sometime around 60 million years ago, probably on floating mats of vegetation, and then evolved in complete isolation into every ecological niche available to them. The result is an entire order of primates that exists as a single geographic endemic. When you look at a ring-tailed lemur, or an indri, or an IEA, you are looking at an animal whose entire evolutionary story happened on one island. The II is worth a specific moment here. It looks like the result of combining a bat, a rat, and a raccoon in the dark. Large forward-facing eyes, enormous ears, wiry black fur, and one finger on each hand that is elongated to an almost grotesque degree, thin and skeletal compared to the others, with a ball and socket joint that gives it 360-degree rotation. That finger is a feeding tool. The II taps on dead wood rapidly, listens to the echo to detect hollow chambers where beetle larvae are hiding, then gnaws a hole with its teeth and uses that elongated finger to hook the larva out. It is essentially echolocation through touch, a sensory system with no close parallel in any other primate. In Madagascar, the II is considered an omen of death by some communities, which has historically led to people killing them on sight. It is endangered. It exists on one island, and the island is losing its forest at one of the fastest rates anywhere on Earth. If you're finding these animals as strange as I am, I post content like this regularly, and I'd really appreciate it if you subscribed. It genuinely helps. Thanks. The Galápagos marine iguana. Charles Darwin, when he first encountered this animal on the Galápagos Islands in 1835, described it as a hideous-looking creature, imps of darkness, he called them, clumped together in masses on the black volcanic rock. He was not wrong about the appearance. The marine iguana is the only lizard on Earth that feeds in the ocean. It dives into cold Pacific water, swims using a flattened tail evolved specifically for aquatic propulsion, and grazes on algae growing on submerged rocks, sometimes at depths of 10 meters or more, holding its breath for up to 30 minutes. When it surfaces, it has a problem. It has ingested enormous quantities of salt along with the algae, and reptiles don't process salt the way marine mammals do. The marine iguana's solution is to sneeze it out. Specialized salt glands connected to the nasal passages concentrate and expel the excess salt, which then crusts white around the animal's face, giving older individuals a permanently encrusted look that Darwin found particularly unpleasant. The Galápagos Islands are roughly 1,000 kilometers off the coast of Ecuador in the Pacific Ocean. The marine iguana evolved there and spread nowhere else because there was nowhere else to go. The cold Humboldt current that makes the algae bloom possible doesn't exist in that form anywhere outside that island chain. The animal is perfectly calibrated to one specific oceanic environment on a volcanic archipelago that didn't exist until relatively recently in geological terms. The marine iguana is also acutely sensitive to El Niño events, which warm the Pacific waters and kill the algae the iguanas depend on. During severe El Niño years, marine iguana populations can crash by 50 to 60%. The animal has a biological response to this that is genuinely unusual. It can shrink. During food scarcity, marine iguanas actually reabsorb bone mass, reducing their body length by up to 20%, then regrow when food returns. Bone reabsorption as a survival strategy is something almost no other vertebrate does. They exist on those islands and nowhere else, and the islands themselves are geologically temporary on any meaningful timescale. The Quokka. Small island off the coast of Western Australia called Rottnest Island. The Dutch explorer Willem de Vlaming landed there in 1696 and thought the animals he saw were large rats. He named the island Rattennest, rat's nest, which became rot nest. They were not rats. They were quokkas, small wallabies about the size of a domestic cat, with rounded faces, small rounded ears, and a mouth structure that produces what looks unmistakably like a smile. The quokka selfie became a genuine cultural phenomenon because the animal is unusually unafraid of humans, and its facial structure genuinely does look like it is pleased to see you. It is not. It is a marsupial with no evolutionary experience of human predators and therefore no instinct to flee, which is a different thing entirely. Quokkas exist in small numbers on the mainland of southwestern Australia, but the viable population, the one that actually sustains the species, lives on Rottnest Island and the nearby Bald Island. Rottnest Island is about 19 square kilometers. That is the primary refuge of an entire species. The island has no foxes and no cats, which is the only reason the quokka survives there at all. On the mainland, introduced predators have reduced the quokka population to scattered remnants in dense scrubland where foxes have difficulty hunting. The island population is the insurance policy, and the island is a tourist destination. Rottnest Island receives around 800,000 visitors per year. The quokka's survival depends on a small predator-free island that also happens to be a popular holiday spot 18 kilometers off the coast of Perth. There is a management plan. There are restrictions on feeding the animals and on behavior around them. It works, mostly. The quokka population on Rottnest is estimated at around 10,000 to 12,000 individuals, which sounds healthy until you consider that it represents the majority of an entire species living on a piece of land smaller than many cities' airport footprints. The Galápagos penguin. While we're in the Galápagos, this one deserves its own moment because it is the only penguin that lives north of the equator, a fact that should not be possible given what penguins are and where they come from. Penguins evolved in the cold waters of the southern hemisphere. Every other species stays there. The Galápagos penguin exists on the equator because of the same cold, Humboldt and Cromwell currents that make the marine iguana's algae possible. The cold upwelling water brings fish, and the fish brought the penguins, and over generations the penguins adapted to an environment radically different from anything their ancestors experienced. They are the smallest penguin in the northern hemisphere by default, since they are the only one. They are also critically endangered, with a total population estimated at around 1,200 individuals, making them one of the rarest penguins on Earth. Like the marine iguana, they are devastated by El Niño events. The 1982 to 1983, El Niño reduced the population by 77%. It partially recovered. The 1997 to 1998 El Niño hit it again. The population has never returned to its pre-1980s levels. There are approximately 1,200 Galápagos penguins alive right now. The entire species fits inside a mid-sized concert venue. They live on 2 islands in one archipelago in one stretch of Pacific Ocean, where a cold current happens to make survival possible. And that current is becoming less reliable as the ocean warms. This is the thing that connects all of these animals. It is not just that they exist in one place. It is that they exist in one place, because that one place, at some point in evolutionary history, was exactly right. The Kakapos, New Zealand, was right because there were no land predators. The Axolotl's lake was right because of its chemistry and temperature. The Lemurs Madagascar was right because of its isolation. The marine iguana's Galápagos was right because of its currents. Every single one of these animals is the product of a very specific set of conditions that happen to exist in a very specific location. And they evolved so completely into those conditions that they became incapable of existing anywhere else. They are not fragile because they are weak. They are fragile because they are perfect, perfectly adapted to a world that is now changing faster than evolution can respond. The Kakapo cannot grow flight muscles in a generation. The axolotl cannot move to a cleaner lake. The lemurs cannot cross the Mozambique Channel. They are locked in place by the same forces that made them extraordinary. And the places they are locked into are, one by one, becoming less and less like the places they were built for. If that's the kind of thing that makes your brain short-circuit a little, consider subscribing so you don't miss the next one. Thanks for watching.